my wife saw two children get into a little punching competition. They weren't our children, and there was no adults there. And Kim saw the whole thing and knew how it went down, and she stopped the punching match. And she said, I saw this whole thing, and you two need to stop right now. And they stopped. But it's to me, it's an interesting kind of situation. I think there's parallels in government in general. There's parallels in, at every age. And at what age do you allow two people to get into a fist fight? At what age do you stop intervening? And so I've heard theories that you let kids get into the fist fight. You let kids fight it out. I've heard those theories. And I know that, a fist fight can escalate into something lethal. And, punching people in the head can be a bad thing. So it's potentially lethal. And so, for those reasons, it's an interesting topic. I was simultaneously reading about the United Nations interfering in what was Yugoslavia. And there's this general idea that you can have peacekeepers. And what's interesting about that phrase is that you actually had bombing. You had bombings, disaster, economic disaster, and you had murders. And that's been labeled peacekeepers. And so there may be a need for peacekeepers, but I would say that wasn't peacekeeping. Or at least it does not appear to be peacekeeping. So I don't think the United Nations actually knows what peacekeeping is. I would guess that they are corrupt, and they are influenced by money. That's another way to say corrupt. And so the people who provide the most money end up having the most influence and the most power, and then they can do things that aren't peacekeeping but can call it peacekeeping. And so maybe there is a need for peacekeepers, like my wife, who was at this place, this indoor playground, and was the peacekeeper. But you have to make sure you do it right. I feel like leading into what peacekeeping should be. And I'm interested in talking about ways to allow people to have combat in a sanctified way. That might be the wrong word, but it is interesting, the concept of allowing the child in high school who wants to blow up the whole school, allow them to go and confront the bullies in combat of some kind. Allow an opportunity for that. And another idea would be train people in combat. And so this gets into what is a peacekeeper. And so I would say that the kind of combat a peacekeeper does is the kind of combat that it neutralizes yet does not cause long-lasting damage. And so punches to the head I would say that is against the rules for a peacekeeper. Dropping bombs on cities is against the rules for a peacekeeper. Using lethal force is against the rules for a peacekeeper. Don't call yourself a peacekeeper if you are doing these things. And so perhaps in high school, in the public education system, in general, even before high school, children can learn jiu-jitsu. And they can learn to do kinds of combat that can neutralize situations in general. So The other half of that, I would say, is using tranquilizing weapons. So, you could have a sniper rifle with, an elephant tranquilizer in it, and that would be a legitimate use of force in some situations. And so there's I think there's two things going on here in general. You have to allow some people to do combat, to fight things out, and have some rules for doing that. A process. That's what government is. Government is a process with a process for improvement. And then you have to have a peacekeeping force, and you have to understand what peacekeeping is. And so the United Nations are just corrupt. A corrupt organization that has no clue what peacekeeping actually is, and so they are both stupid and evil. That's probably the right way to say it, if you were to judge them based on what they did when Bill Clinton was president. So that's the idea I want to put out into the world, is that the peacekeepers in the world are not peacekeepers, and there is a need for real peacekeepers. All right, that's it. Have a good day, with love and wisdom. That's my intention.